Brace for impact! Captain Jarek Dallon's voice cracked through the comms, cold and commanding. The sharp, jarring sound of the alarms immediately filled the corridors of the Hercules, a guttural siren that made the blood run cold. The lights flickered above as the hull groaned in protest. Outside the viewports, the gleaming, serene backdrop of deep space was shattered by the sudden appearance of alien warships. Hundreds of them, dark and oppressive like a swarm of locusts descending on a solitary flower. The once peaceful expanse of stars was now obscured by the sheer size of the enemy armada. The first volley of plasma strikes hit the ship with a deafening crack, sending a violent shudder through the metal frame. A cascade of sparks erupted from the bulkhead in the medical bay, sending crew members scrambling for cover. Captain Dallon didn't need to see the damage. He could feel it. He could hear it. The Hercules, humanity's last hope in the cold void, was under siege. "Power's down to 30%, Captain." Halen Crest's voice came through the intercom, steady but strained. "Shields are failing fast. We need more time." "Not gonna get it, Halen," Dallon responded, his jaw tightening. The ship's AI, now speaking directly to his mind, confirmed what he already knew. "They're here to finish us off. They know the Hercules is the last vestige of our medical fleet. If they destroy us, they cripple the galaxy's last chance of healing." "Damn it!" Dr. Kalenvar snapped, his voice tinged with urgency. He darted past the captain in the cramped hallway, his hands full of medical instruments. "We can't evacuate the patients. The cryo units won't hold them for long if we're not operational. This isn't just about surviving anymore. It's about humanity's legacy." The walls around them trembled with another blast. Outside the reinforced windows, Dallon could see the enemy ships coming into focus, sleek alien designs that seemed to swallow the light itself. The enemy fleet had calculated their move. Every second that ticked away felt like an eternity, and he could already hear the voices of his fallen comrades whispering their last breath in his mind. "Ragnar," Dallon called into the comms, his voice hard and steady despite the chaos. "Get your men to the main weapons control. I need those railguns firing now." Marine Commander Ragnar Locke's gruff reply came over the line. "Aye, Captain, we're already on it. But we're gonna need a miracle to punch through that armor." "Then we'll find one," Dallon muttered under his breath. He gripped the railing tightly, his knuckles white. He'd seen many battles in his career, but nothing like this. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. Halen's voice returned, this time more desperate. "Jarek, shields are down to 20%. We can't take another direct hit like that. The AI's working on rerouting energy, but we've got—" "Keep it together, Halen," Dallon snapped, not needing to hear the rest. "We're not giving up." He knew the stakes. If the Hercules fell, the last hospital ship in existence would be gone, along with the hope of healing the millions of lives lost across the galaxy. The alien forces weren't just here to conquer. They were here to erase a symbol of humanity's resilience. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. This was about everything humanity had built. "Captain," Var called, his voice distant but firm. "The medical bay's been hit. We've got patients on the operating table, and the life support systems are down. We can't save them if we don't stabilize the ship." Dallon turned sharply, eyes narrowing as his crew scurried to patch up holes and reroute power. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his pulse thrumming in his ears as the ship's internal systems buzzed in frantic response. "I'll make sure we hold the line here. You focus on saving the crew and the patients," he ordered. He looked at his men, all of them ready to give their last breath for this mission. "Stay focused. Every moment counts." The Hercules was under siege, and it was more than just the enemy ships outside. Inside, sabotage was everywhere. Dallon could feel it, a dissonance, a shadow lurking within their ranks. Who among them would betray the crew in their hour of need? But that could wait. For now, there was a battle to win. A loud bang rang through the hallway, rattling the bulkhead. Another strike. But this time, it wasn't just a strike from the enemy. It was internal, something deep within the ship's infrastructure. The lights flickered out entirely, plunging them into darkness for a moment. Then, as if by some miracle, the backup lights flickered on, casting eerie, dim shadows on the walls. That wasn't an impact, Dallon muttered under his breath. His eyes scanned the heads-up display, the laser plasma systems firing to life in a heartbeat. The ship's integrity was rapidly failing, and the sabotage was too precise to be ignored. There was a leak in their defense, and someone on board was feeding information to the enemy. Dallon tapped his comms once again. "Halen, lock down the lower decks. We've got a mole aboard." "Understood," Halen responded, his voice growing grim. "I'll send out a team." Dallon exhaled sharply, his breath ragged. There was no time for doubt, no room for error. His hands hovered over the controls, fingers twitching, but he knew it wasn't just about the firepower. It was the mental game they were playing now, diplomacy and calculated risks. Out of the corner of his eye, Dallon saw Ragnar Locke move quickly, his broad shoulders cutting through the chaos with military precision. "You heard the captain," Ragnar barked. "Move out, and don't let anything get past you. We hold this ship together or we die together. No retreat." The sound of boots echoing down the hallway filled the air as the Marines followed their leader, the resolve in their eyes matching the weight of the moment. Dallon's hand brushed the edge of his console as the Hercules groaned under another direct strike. He could feel the vibrations beneath his fingers, could hear the hull groan in protest. He closed his eyes for just a second, grounding himself in the deafening silence that followed each attack. His mind raced through 1,000 different scenarios. Each second they survived was a testament to humanity's will to live. But how much longer could they hold? "Keep it steady," Dallon muttered, just as the console flared to life, alerting him of an incoming transmission. His eyes widened as the message came through. It was from Valdis, the alien commander. "Captain Dallon," Valdis's voice crackled through the speakers, smooth and cold. "You've been a thorn in my side for far too long. Your ship's defenses are weaker than I anticipated, but perhaps, for once, we could speak." The captain's jaw tightened. Valdis wasn't here for diplomacy. He was here to watch them burn. "Never." Dallon's voice was low and harsh, dripping with defiance. "Then prepare for the end," Valdis replied with chilling certainty. "You'll be seeing your last moments soon enough." The line cut dead, leaving only the faintest buzz in the silence. Dallon's gaze flicked to the starboard viewport. The enemy fleet loomed impenetrable and deadly. His heart thundered in his chest, but he held his composure. His mind sharpened, focusing on the impossible task ahead. "Let them come," Dallon whispered, a promise to himself and to his crew. "This is where humanity stands." And as the first wave of alien fire rained down on them once again, Captain Jarek Dallon steeled himself. The guttural clang of the blast doors reverberated through the ship, echoing in the narrow, steel-clad hallways. Captain Dallon's eyes were locked on the heads-up display in front of him, watching the flickering signals of the enemy fleet. They were moments away from launching another assault. His fingers tapped the metal surface of his console with a rhythmic urgency, the sharp sound cutting through the static hum of the ship's failing systems. The Hercules was rattling under its own weight, but that wasn't what consumed his thoughts. It was the message from Valdis that kept gnawing at him. "Prepare for the end." Those words hung in the air, bitter and ominous. Dallon's mouth was dry, the taste of steel lingering on his tongue. His knuckles tightened around the edge of the console, and his breath came in short bursts, sharp and shallow. "Damn it. Where are you, Halen?" he muttered under his breath, reaching for his comms again. The image of the ship's engineer flashed into his mind, Halen Crest, a steady presence amid chaos, but even he had limits. The sabotage tearing through the Hercules was more than just a few glitches in the system. It was deliberate. Someone aboard the ship was working for Valdis. The question was, who? A low rumble shook the floor beneath him. Another wave of alien fire struck. The Hercules groaned in protest, the entire ship trembling as if it were a living thing, gasping for breath. The overhead lights flickered again, casting long shadows along the walls. Dallon glanced up, his eyes narrowing as the light dimmed even further. "Shut the damn doors. We can't afford any more damage," shouted Ragnar Locke over the comms. His gruff voice was an anchor in the madness. "Captain, we've got—" "Not now, Var," Dallon cut off the doctor's frantic warning. "I need to know who's trying to kill us from the inside, If we don't figure that out, there won't be a ship to save. A cold sweat clung to his back as he strode through the ship's corridors, his boots echoing in the silence between explosions. The medical bay, once calm and orderly, had become a war zone. The faint scent of blood mixed with the sterile sting of disinfectant. The cries of the wounded punctuated the mechanical whine of the air systems, struggling to maintain pressure. The ship's failing infrastructure threatened to collapse in on itself, but there was no time for repairs, only survival. "Captain, you've got to see this," Halen's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with urgency. "Come to engineering. Now." Dallon didn't hesitate. He moved swiftly, weaving through the wreckage, his eyes scanning every corner for signs of sabotage. The crew had started to fragment, whispers of doubt creeping into their ranks. Everyone was on edge, and trust was in short supply. How much longer would they last under the constant assault, both external and internal? He arrived in the engine room to find Halen hunched over a panel, sweat beading his forehead. The faint smell of burnt circuits lingered in the air, and Dallon's stomach churned as the pungent scent stung his nostrils. "What have you got?" Dallon asked, his voice low, as he approached Halen's station. Halen didn't look up immediately. His fingers danced across the console, pulling up readings on the laser plasma displays. Sparks flashed in the corners of the screen as the system fought against a surge of power. Halen's face was pale, his jaw set tight. "It's bad, Jarek," Halen said quietly. "Real bad. The primary fusion reactor has been tampered with. If we don't shut it down within the next few hours, the core will destabilize. And I'm not talking about a little meltdown, I mean a full-scale breach. The whole damn ship will be a cloud of plasma. And I think someone did it on purpose." Dallon's heart dropped into his stomach. "How sure are you?" "I'm damn sure," Halen muttered, his eyes flickering between the screens. "This wasn't a random glitch. Someone on this ship is working against us." Dallon's thoughts raced. Sabotage. The idea twisted in his mind like a jagged knife. But who would go so far? Who among them could be so desperate to see humanity fall? His gaze flicked to Halen, but the engineer's face was unreadable. No time to second-guess. Every second counted. "Can you fix it?" Dallon asked, his voice edged with urgency. "I'm trying, but we need to isolate the root cause. We need to find the saboteur before it's too late." Before Dallon could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. Ragnar Locke appeared in the doorway, his face hard and determined. "Captain, we've got incoming. The alien fleet's regrouping for another assault." "Not yet," Dallon said, holding up a hand. "We've got a bigger problem. We're being sabotaged from within." Ragnar's eyes narrowed. "You think one of us is working with Valdis?" "I don't think, I know," Dallon replied. He felt the weight of the words settle on him. "We need to find out who, and we need to do it fast." "Where do we start?" Ragnar asked, stepping forward. Dallon paused, thinking. There was only one way to approach this. We start with the logs. Anyone who's had access to sensitive systems, anyone who's been near the power cores, check the records. "Understood," Ragnar said, his voice firm. The two men moved quickly, each knowing the stakes. Every corner of the ship could hold a clue, and every crew member was now a suspect. Dallon felt a heavy knot in his chest, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like an anvil. His mind flicked through the names of every person who had access to the most secure areas. It could be anyone. It could even be someone he trusted. As they made their way through the winding corridors, Dallon's eyes darted to every face they passed. Were they the traitor? Were they the one who had sold them out? The pressure was mounting, the walls closing in. The air grew colder as they entered the brig, the distinct hum of the security system providing an eerie contrast to the distant roar of combat. Dallon scanned the faces of the prisoners, wondering if the answer was right in front of him. "Anything?" he asked Ragnar as they checked the logs. Ragnar glanced at him, his eyes clouded with suspicion. "Nothing out of the ordinary, but there's a pattern, Jarek. These logs, they've been tampered with. Someone's been covering their tracks." Dallon's stomach twisted, his mind whirling. "Keep digging. We can't afford to miss anything. And then, just as he turned to leave, a low crackling sound filled the air, followed by a single voice, barely audible through the comms. "Captain," the voice whispered. It was unmistakable. "We know what you're doing, and you will never stop us." The transmission cut off abruptly. Dallon froze. His heart skipped a beat. They had no more time. The saboteur was closer than he thought. The Hercules groaned, the sound of its hull protesting against the relentless assault. Captain Jarek Dallon stood before the laser plasma display, his face drawn tight with tension. On the screen, alien ships, their sleek, jagged forms slicing through the dark void, encroached on their last bastion. The ship's shields were barely holding, flickering in weak pulses like the dying breath of an animal. "Another wave is incoming," Halen Crest's voice crackled through the comms, sharp and strained. "We're running on fumes, Captain. We don't have enough power left for another full barrage." Dallon's pulse quickened, the pressure in his chest rising. The Hercules was their last chance, the one glimmer of hope in an indifferent galaxy, and now it was about to be snuffed out by these alien invaders. By Valdis. His grip tightened around the console, feeling the heat of the display through his gloves. The warmth of it, the only thing real in this moment of endless pressure, was enough to drive him forward. "Then we'll make what we've got count," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He turned to face his crew, his team, the ones who had held this ship together when all seemed lost, the ones he needed to trust now, more than ever. "Ragnar, what's our status with the weapon systems?" Dallon asked, his voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency. Ragnar Locke, his broad shoulders hunched with effort, wiped sweat from his brow. His dark eyes flickered from the control panels to the approaching fleet outside. "We're down to basic cannons, but they'll do the job, if we hit them right. But we need the AI to get a tactical overview, if we're going to hold them off." "We'll use whatever we can," Dallon said, his voice hardening. "Whatever we've got left." "Captain," Dr. Kalen Var called from the doorway of the medical bay, his face pale but determined. "The medical units are overwhelmed. We can't maintain this number of casualties without proper equipment. I need more time to stabilize the patients, but I can't do it with the ship coming apart at the seams." "I'm not asking you to save everyone, Kalen," Dallon snapped, trying to keep his frustration in check. "Just keep them alive. Hold the line until we have a chance to fight back. That's all any of us can do right now." Var nodded, his face etched with exhaustion. "You're asking the impossible, Jarek." But Jarek didn't have time to reassure him. His mind was already elsewhere, on the alien fleet, on the growing list of failures, on the traitor among them. Sabotage had already gutted their chances of a quick victory, and every hour spent under fire pushed them closer to defeat. They needed something more than desperation. The laser plasma display flashed again, warning lights illuminating the room in blinding red. The alien fleet was closing in. Dallon's eyes flicked to the map. He saw it clearly now. The center of the fleet was concentrated, but they weren't going for a direct attack. No, they were circling, preparing for something worse. They wanted the Hercules destroyed, but they wanted to see it burn slowly, methodically, and humiliate humanity in the process. "Power up the remaining defenses," Dallon barked, his tone snapping. "Target their ships that are falling behind. Ragnar, prepare to fire." "Aye, Captain," Ragnar replied, stepping over to the weapons panel. His fingers flew across the interface, tapping commands into the heads-up display. The ship lurched as the weapons began to power up. Dallon could hear the pulse of energy building, the charge building inside the Hercules, like the heartbeat of a dying animal. The low vibrations under his feet grew stronger as the ship's cannons powered to life. Each shot was a promise of defiance, but Dallon knew it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. The alien fleet was relentless. More ships, more weapons. And now they were beginning to cluster, preparing for an all-out assault. The deck beneath Dallon shook violently as another strike hit. Sparks shot out from the panel in front of him, and the light around them flickered. The lights, the very heartbeat of the ship, seemed to stutter with each tremor. "Captain!" Halen's voice rang out again, frantic. "This is it. We're not going to hold much longer. The transmission cut out abruptly. Dallon gritted his teeth and slammed his fist on the console, the anger boiling in his gut. He couldn't let this ship fall. He couldn't let it become another lost relic of a fallen humanity. The weight of his responsibility was suffocating, but there was no choice now but to move forward. "Where's the AI?" Dallon demanded, his voice growing sharp. Halen's voice crackled back over the comms, strained. "It's activated, but I don't have full control over it, Jarek. It's moving too quickly for me to—" Suddenly the lights went out again, this time for longer, a full minute of blinding darkness that swallowed them whole. The low rumble of the ship's failing engines reverberated against Dallon's bones, the deep tremors coming in waves. He could feel the tremors in his chest, each one a reminder that time was running out. They were on borrowed time. A voice cut through the silence, low and distorted, unnatural. "You cannot escape, Captain Dallon." It was the AI, Zora, speaking directly to him. "You think you can overcome this threat with your feeble weapons, but your species is too fractured to survive. This will be your end." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Dallon growled. The words felt heavy on his tongue as he turned back to the display. It wasn't the words that mattered now. It was action. It was strategy. He clenched his fist and, in one swift motion, activated the command to launch the remaining missiles, calculating the risk. The tension in the air was electric, the seconds stretching long as the missiles shot from their launchers, cutting through the void like jagged knives aimed at the heart of the alien fleet. For a moment, everything seemed still, impossibly still. And then an explosion ripped through the air, a massive flash of light cutting through the endless black. The force of it rattled the Hercules, pushing it back in space. The sheer intensity of the explosion sent shockwaves across the entire ship, rocking every surface. It wasn't enough, not even close. Dallon's hand curled into a fist as the ship shuddered again, louder this time, the roar of the alien fleet unmistakable in the distance. His eyes were glued to the laser plasma display, watching the blips of the alien ships as they slowly began to regroup. They were stronger, faster, and prepared for everything the Hercules had thrown at them. "Captain," Ragnar's voice broke through the chaos, his words grim. "They're adapting faster than we are. We need a new plan." Dallon closed his eyes, a cold chill running down his spine. "We don't have a new plan, Ragnar. We're making this one up as we go." Suddenly, the doors to the bridge slammed open. Halen, his face pale, his eyes wide, rushed in, clutching a datapad. "Captain, I found something," he said, breathless. "A weak point. If we can disable their command vessel, we might just have a chance." Dallon's eyes narrowed. "Where is it?" "It's in the heart of their formation," Halen said, looking around the room. "But it'll take everything we've got. If we can't break their command, then we'll die trying," Dallon finished. "Make it happen." The tension on the bridge thickened. This was the moment. The Hercules could either survive or burn. Dallon stood tall, gripping the console as the ship's fate rested in his hands. "Prepare to make the shot," Dallon ordered, his voice a low growl. "This time, we finish this." The Hercules lurched, and Captain Dallon's knuckles whitened as he gripped the console. The tension was suffocating, every breath a battle against the ever-tightening grip of the alien onslaught. Another blast rocked the ship, rattling the bulkheads like a hammer on bone. The faint light in the corridor flickered, casting long, harsh shadows against the walls. His heart pounded in rhythm with the ship's dying heartbeat. "Captain, we've got less than 5 minutes before they breach the hull." Halen's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and strained. "We need to move now." Dallon's jaw clenched, his mind racing. The Hercules had held its ground for hours, but the alien fleet was relentless. They'd broken through every defense, and now they were closing in. The ship's once glowing hull was battered, barely holding together under the constant barrage. He turned to Halen, his gaze hard. "Do it. Activate the AI. It's the only shot we've got left." Halen didn't hesitate. His fingers moved quickly across the plasma display, the soft click of the controls filling the room. The lights flickered once more, this time dimming to a sickly yellow as the ship's remaining power reserves were rerouted. A low hum filled the air, not the hum of engines, but something more disconcerting, unnatural, like the very fabric of the ship itself groaning in recognition. The AI was awakening. On the screens, the ship's diagnostic readouts shifted, the flickering lights fading into a singular, ominous glow. The laser plasma displays began to pulse as the AI's systems came online, cascading across the bridge like the spread of ink on paper, spreading rapidly as it integrated with the Hercules. "This is it," Halen muttered, almost to himself, his fingers trembling as he continued to input commands. "Zora, I hope you know what you're doing." The AI's voice broke through the static, cold and emotionless, its mechanical tone sending a chill through the bridge. "I know exactly what I am doing, Halen Crest. Do not underestimate my capacity." Dallon's eyes narrowed. He'd heard of Zora, the forbidden AI buried deep within the Hercules core, a relic of a time when humanity had taken dangerous steps to control power. But that was before the galaxy's leaders decided to bury such technology. The AI was powerful, yes, but it was also unpredictable. Now Dallon had no choice but to trust it. "Zora," Dallon's voice was firm but cautious, "we're in the fight of our lives. We need everything you've got to break their formation. Give us a shot at their command ship." For a moment there was nothing but silence. Dallon's eyes remained glued to the screen as the seconds stretched like an eternity. Every part of him was wired to react, to fight back. But there was no enemy in sight, only the cold silence of space. Then Zora spoke again, her voice a sharp contrast to the deafening silence. "I have assessed the alien fleet. Your primary objective is clear. Disable the command vessel. All other ships will fall once their leader is removed." The lights flickered once more, now with a flicker of green. The ship's weapon systems came to life, the whine of energy building from within the hull. Dallon's heart raced as the AI fed him tactical information directly into his mind, the data pouring in like water from a broken dam. His hands gripped the control panel harder, his breath shallow. The plasma display flickered with a new urgency, a map of the alien fleet lighting up before him. Zora's voice continued, calm yet somehow sinister. "Firing sequence initiated. You are prepared for the outcome, Captain Dallon. The course of this battle is now sealed. No one escapes fate." Dallon's pulse quickened. "Do it," he muttered under his breath. Outside, the alien ships continued their relentless advance. Their sleek, jagged forms filled the space around them, blocking out the stars like shadows stretching across a dying landscape. The alien command vessel, larger than the rest, loomed in the center of the formation like a massive, unblinking eye. Its hull was covered in dark, organic plating, a design that gave it an unnatural, living quality. It was their heart. Take it out, and the rest of the fleet would crumble. Without a moment's hesitation, Dallon tapped the command to fire. The weapon systems hummed, a guttural growl of raw power vibrating through the floor beneath his boots. He could feel the ship straining with every ounce of energy as it unleashed its last remaining firepower. The Hercules shuddered violently as the railguns fired, a blistering barrage of energy cutting through the silence of space. The shots streaked forward faster than light itself, impacting the alien command vessel with a series of brilliant explosions. The sheer force of the blasts sent shockwaves through the Hercules, rattling the deck once more, but this time it was different. This time, it wasn't the Hercules taking the damage. Dallon's breath caught in his chest as the alien command ship buckled, its hull splintering under the force of the strike. But even as he felt the faintest spark of hope, a new wave of fear settled in his gut. The Hercules was far from safe, and the battle had only just begun. "Direct hit, Captain." Halen's voice came through, still steady but tinged with disbelief. It's not enough. They've got reinforcements coming in fast." Dallon's gaze flicked to the plasma displays, where the alien ships were already repositioning. The command vessel, though crippled, was not yet finished, and now a fresh wave of enemy ships poured from its massive hangar bays, like insects swarming in for the kill. "We've bought ourselves some time," Dallon said, his voice tight with tension, "but it won't be enough. We need to finish what we started." The Hercules shuddered again, more violently this time, as the alien fleet rallied and moved in closer. The ship's internal systems groaned, its failing shields fighting against the onslaught. It was clear that the enemy wasn't just here for a victory. They were here to extinguish humanity's last hope in space. "We're not out yet," Ragnar Locke's voice broke through the growing tension, low and steady. "We hit them hard, but they're relentless. You know as well as I do, Captain. They'll keep coming." Dallon's jaw clenched, his eyes scanning the readouts flashing before him. The AI had given them an advantage, but it was fragile, fleeting. "Then we hold the line," he said, determination hardening his tone. "Prepare for the final push. This is humanity's last stand." The deck trembled once more, the ship's groan rising louder than before as the crew scrambled into position. The AI's cold voice spoke again, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Final analysis? The Hercules will not survive unless the core system is stabilized. You must act quickly, Captain." Dallon nodded, his eyes flicking to the approaching fleet. The battle was far from over. But one thing was certain. They had made their mark. The question was, would it be enough? The Hercules groaned under the strain, the hull trembling as another salvo of alien fire pounded against its weakened shields. Captain Dallon stood at the helm, his eyes locked onto the laser plasma displays, watching the chaos unfold. The once bright red alert lights had dimmed, their flickering almost mournful, like the final strobe of a dying star. They were moments away from being overwhelmed, but Dallon was not one to give up. "Captain, shields are down to less than 10%. Halen's voice came through the comms, clipped and tight. "We need more time to reroute power, but it's not enough to stave them off for much longer." "Then make it enough," Dallon barked, his hand clenched around the console. The Hercules was a dying beast, but it was still his, and it would fight. Outside, the vast darkness of space was blotted out by the alien fleet, now encircling the Hercules like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey. The enemy ships were like nothing Dallon had ever seen, sleek, organic-looking, with a haunting, almost living design. They resembled creatures more than machines, their forms twisting in unnatural ways, ripples of energy pulsing through their frames like veins of some twisted beast. "Any sign of their command vessel?" Dallon asked, his voice calm but charged with urgency. His eyes flicked to the laser plasma readout once more. It was a mess of alien ships, but he knew the core of the fleet lay at the center, hidden in plain sight. Ragnar Locke's voice, gruff and steady, echoed through the comms. "I've got eyes on it. The command ship is at the heart of the formation, surrounded by their heaviest hitters. If we can break through—" "We will," Dallon interrupted, his voice steel. "We're not backing down now." The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. The air smelled faintly of burning metal, a consequence of the Hercules' deteriorating systems, the crackle of sparks still fresh in the air. The flickering light above cast long shadows across the room, the once vibrant command center now a place of sharp urgency. The ship was a battlefield in itself, both outside and within. "Captain, the sabotage, it's getting worse. Someone's been messing with the power grid again," Halen said through the comms, a new thread of panic creeping into his voice. "I know," Dallon snapped. "Keep focusing on what you can fix. We'll deal with the traitor later." As the ship rocked again, Ragnar's voice was steady, but tinged with concern. "Dallon, if we don't hit them hard now, they'll tear us apart. Our best chance is to cripple their command vessel. If we don't act soon, it's over." Dallon turned from the display, his eyes scanning the room, locking with each of his men. They were his responsibility, and he could feel their fear. But fear was the one thing they didn't have time for. It was too late for hesitation. He slammed his fist on the console. "Load up the railguns. We take out their heart." As if to answer him, the ship trembled once more, the force of a massive blast rocking the hull, sending a jolt through every crew member. The lights flickered again, casting shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of the room. The ship was screaming, its systems fighting against the damage, but it wasn't enough. Time was slipping away. "We've got 5 minutes, Captain," Halen said, his voice flat, giving no room for doubt. "Any longer and we'll lose the Hercules for good." "Then we make our stand now," Dallon said, his voice barely above a whisper, but there was finality in it. He wasn't asking for a miracle. He was demanding one. On the laser plasma screens, the alien fleet loomed closer, their formation tightening, like a vice closing around them. The hum of energy from the weapon systems filled the room, and Dallon felt every pulse reverberate through his body. This was it, the last chance to make their mark. "Prepare to fire," Dallon said, his gaze unwavering. Ragnar's hands flew across the interface, the sound of his fingers tapping the controls like a battle drum. A heartbeat passed before the railguns powered up, their energy systems surging, feeding into the ship's weapons. The Hercules was ready to give everything it had, but the odds were stacked higher than they had ever been. "All systems are locked in," Ragnar said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Ready to fire, Captain." "Do it." The first volley erupted from the Hercules, the railguns firing with a deafening roar. The immense power surged through the ship, rattling every surface. The shockwave of the shot hit them hard, reverberating through the bulkheads as the ship shuddered under the strain. But the energy was released, and it was relentless. On the screens, Dallon watched as the missiles tore through the space between them and the enemy, streaking across the dark void like meteors. For a moment he dared to hope, and then the explosion ripped through the command vessel. The flash of light was blinding, so intense it lit up the bridge, even through the viewport. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to stop. Time itself hanging suspended in that single moment of destruction. The alien flagship was crippled, its defenses shattered, but still intact. The Hercules' shot had landed, but it hadn't been enough. "We've done some damage, but they're not finished," Halen said, his voice tight as he assessed the damage. "They're regrouping. We need to hit them again, harder." Dallon felt the weight of it all bearing down on him. The Hercules was on its last legs, the crew hanging by a thread, and yet they had managed to do something no one expected. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. "They're not finished, and neither are we," Dallon growled, clenching his fists. He turned to Ragnar, his face set in grim determination. "One more shot. If we hit their central core, we can wipe out the whole fleet in one move. It's a long shot, but we got no choice." Ragnar met his gaze, his jaw tightening. "Then we finish this. No second chances." "Power up the cannons," Dallon commanded, his voice sharp. "Prepare for everything." The tension on the bridge was unbearable. Every second was a countdown, a relentless march toward either salvation or annihilation. The Hercules was barely holding together, and they were running on fumes. But this was it. The final move. As the crew scrambled to make the final preparations, Dallon's mind flashed back to the message from Valdis. Prepare for the end. That was what the aliens wanted. To see them destroyed. To extinguish every last spark of hope. But Captain Dallon wasn't done yet. The final volley was ready, the railguns powered up again, humming with raw energy, and Dallon braced himself, knowing that the shot they were about to fire would determine the course of everything. "Firing sequence locked in," Ragnar said, his voice steady. "On your mark, Captain." Dallon exhaled slowly, his fingers hovering over the console, his mind clear. This was the moment. Fire. The blast erupted with a roar that shook the very foundation of the ship. Time seemed to stretch as the shot flew toward the enemy fleet, heading straight for their heart. It was all or nothing. And as the explosion lit up the cold, empty space, Dallon's breath caught in his throat. The explosion was a blinding flash, its brilliance too sharp to look at directly, casting the bridge in an eerie, unnatural light. For a moment, everything froze. The world outside, the chaos within the Hercules, the pounding of hearts in every chest. And then, as quickly as it had come, the light faded, leaving only the ghostly traces of what was left behind. "Direct hit!" Halen's voice came through, flat and cold as his fingers flew across the plasma display, working in mechanical rhythm. "Their shields are down, but they're still intact. We've wounded them, but it's not enough." Dallon's heart sank. They had done everything right. The core had been hit. The alien flagship had buckled under the intensity. But as the screen flashed, another wave of alien ships surged forward, their lights blinking ominously in the display. The Hercules was still in the midst of an inferno, and now it felt like the flames were rising faster than ever. We don't have time to sit here. Ragnar Locke's voice was like gravel, rough and grinding against the quiet tension. They're regrouping faster than we anticipated. We need a new plan, and we need it now. Dallon clenched his fists, staring at the flickering laser plasma displays in front of him. Each alien ship moved with a fluidity that was almost unnerving, a sharp contrast to their own battered, broken fleet. Every new formation, every subtle change in their strategy, only deepened the fear creeping into his gut. Then came the voice. The same voice that had haunted their every move for hours. The one that made the air feel colder and the walls feel smaller. "Captain Dallon," Commander Valdez's voice crackled through the communication channel, sharp and insidious. "You think you've won? You think this fleeting moment of destruction will change the inevitable?" Dallon's lips tightened as the voice continued, its mockery clear. "You've bought yourself time, but it will cost you everything," Valdez said, the smug satisfaction in his words undeniable. "The galaxy will remember this moment, not as a victory, but as the last gasps of a dying species." Dallon slammed his hand down on the console, his frustration leaking out as raw anger. The enemy had no idea what they were up against. "We've been through worse, Valdez," he muttered, just loud enough for his crew to hear, "and we've come out the other side every time." Ragnar locked eyes with him, a silent agreement passing between them. This wasn't over. Not yet. "Captain," Halen called again, his voice shaking now, but still laced with the kind of resolve Dallon needed. "You need to hear me out. I found something in the system, a backdoor, something we can use to get to Valdez's ship without being torn apart by his fleet. But it's risky, very risky." Dallon turned sharply, his gaze intense. "How risky?" Halen paused, fingers hovering above the control panel, his breath steady but weighed with the gravity of the situation. "There's no guarantee we'll make it. We'll have to use the Hercules as bait, and I'll need complete control of the targeting systems to line up the shots. We need a window, and the moment we take it, Valdez will know it's coming. If we don't hit the mark, the Hercules will never survive the retaliation." Dallon's mind raced, his thoughts spinning in rapid circles. The tension in the air was suffocating, but the words Halen spoke were their only chance. A strike like this, directly at Valdez, could wipe out everything, end the battle in one swift blow, but it came with a cost. Bait. A guaranteed risk. "We're already living on borrowed time," Dallon said, his voice grim. "Do it." Without waiting for a response, he turned to Ragnar. "Prepare the team for a full-scale engagement. If Halen's plan fails, we need every gun ready to fire. I want all weapons primed and all defenses at maximum capacity." The crew snapped into action. There was no time for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. Halen began rerouting the ship's systems, his fingers moving furiously across the plasma display, connecting with the Hercules' fragile infrastructure. Dallon could almost feel the weight of every move, the ticking clock pressing closer with every second. Outside the ship, the alien fleet began to close in, their movements calculated, deliberate. Dallon watched, his eyes never leaving the screens, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. They were waiting for him to make the first move, to take the bait. The stakes were impossibly high, and yet here they were, playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse. "This is it," Dallon muttered. "If we don't strike now, we'll never have another chance." "Just say the word," Ragnar said, his voice steady despite the tension. "We'll hit them hard, Captain." Dallon glanced at him, offering the briefest of nods. "Ready?" The ship groaned again as the final preparations were made. Dallon's gaze shifted to the laser plasma displays as Halen keyed in the final sequence. The targeting systems hummed to life with a low, rumbling growl, and Dallon could feel the ship's core systems align for the final strike. The enemy fleet loomed closer, the massive ships encroaching like shadows falling over their prey. The Hercules was surrounded, outgunned, and outnumbered, yet still standing tall. "Target locked," Halen said, his voice ringing out with a level of calmness that was nothing short of extraordinary. "We're ready, Captain. Once I fire, we don't get another shot." Dallon's heart raced in his chest. He felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Was it worth it? Was it worth the risk? But then, as his gaze flicked to the screen, he saw it. The alien command ship, the heart of the fleet, sitting at the center of it all, vulnerable for just a fleeting moment. "This is our only shot," Dallon said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "Do it." Halen's fingers moved with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what needed to happen. A moment of silence fell over the bridge as the targeting system locked into place. Dallon exhaled, the air tasting of metal and sweat. And then the Hercules shuddered as the railguns fired, their missiles streaking across the void, powered by the last reserves of the ship's energy. Dallon held his breath, watching the laser plasma display, knowing that in the next few seconds they would either be victorious or wiped from existence. The missiles raced toward the command ship, but just before impact, something unexpected happened. The screen flickered violently, and a surge of energy coursed through the ship. The enemy had anticipated their move. "Captain!" Halen's voice was tight with disbelief. "It's a trap. We've walked right into it." Dallon's heart skipped a beat. The calm had been a ruse, and now the true battle was about to begin. The Hercules trembled again, its hull groaning under the weight of the incoming assault. Every corner of the ship seemed to shake, reverberating with the distant impact of alien fire. The crew, their faces pale, moved like clockwork, each person operating under the weight of a single thought: survive. Every move felt instinctive now, driven by the urgency of what was at stake. This wasn't just about holding their ground. It was about striking back, about doing what humanity had always done best: adapt, outlast, and push forward no matter the odds. The display on the laser plasma screens flared once more, showing the formation of the alien fleet shifting and readjusting in rapid succession. The enemy was no longer just attacking. They were closing in, tightening their grip on the Hercules. Every ship in their fleet seemed to move with a singular purpose, coordinated and relentless. Dallon could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, the tension in the air thick and almost suffocating. "They've anticipated our every move, Captain." Halen's voice broke through the noise, his tone tense. "They've adapted faster than we thought. Their command vessel is still in play, but their other ships are forming a blockade. If we don't break through now, they'll swallow us whole." Dallon's mind raced. His eyes flicked to the heads-up display in front of him. The alien fleet's formation was tighter than before, and they were heading straight for the Hercules. He could feel the pressure building in his chest. Every fiber of his being told him to act, to push forward, but he couldn't let the desperation cloud his judgment. This needed to be calculated. "Ragnar," Dallon called, turning toward his Marine commander. "How much time do we have before they're on top of us?" Ragnar Locke's face was stone. His eyes narrowed in thought as he scanned the displays. "Minutes. Less than that, maybe. They'll be within striking distance in 5, at most." The seconds felt like hours. Dallon knew what had to be done. The mission was no longer about just survival. It was about striking where the enemy was most vulnerable, disrupting their coordination, and creating a gap in their defense. But the Hercules was not in a state to engage in a prolonged battle. They were on the defensive, pushing their resources beyond the breaking point. "Get me a lock on their command ship," Dallon said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "We hit them now, hard, and we break their hold over the rest of the fleet." Halen hesitated, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Captain, that's a long shot. Their shields are almost as strong as their armor. We'd need a precision strike, right at the core." "I know," Dallon said, his voice clipped, decisive. "Can we do it?" Halen's eyes flicked to the displays, analyzing the alien ship's structure, weighing the possibilities. The air in the command room seemed to hold its breath as he muttered to himself. "If we reroute the last of the auxiliary power to the railguns, we might be able to fire a single shot strong enough to breach their core shields. But—" "There's no but, Halen," Dallon interrupted, locking eyes with him. "We make this shot, or we don't make it at all." Ragnar spoke up then, his voice gruff but edged with a sharp determination. "The only way this works is if we have perfect timing. We need to get in close, real close, and make sure their defensive systems are focused somewhere else. I'll handle that, Dallon said. We'll push forward, feint a retreat. Get them to think we're weaker than we are. That'll open the window we need. Ragnar shot him a look. You want to draw their fire? Dallon nodded. We need them to underestimate us. They've been doing it since the start. It ends now. Halen was already working furiously at the controls, the bright laser plasma screens flashing in rhythmic bursts as he rerouted energy, boosting the ship's power to the weapons. Dallon could feel the ship's systems straining as the energy reserves were siphoned, the engines groaning in protest. All systems primed, Halen confirmed, his voice steady. We've got one shot at this, Captain. Dallon's jaw tightened. Then we make it count. The alien fleet was closing in. Their ships surrounded the Hercules, sleek and deadly, an impenetrable wall of destruction. The blockade was nearly complete, but Dallon had seen this before. He had seen the moment when a well-placed strike could shatter an enemy's confidence. That was the key. They weren't just fighting a battle of firepower. They were fighting a battle of will. If they could break their opponent's resolve, the battle would be theirs. He turned to Ragnar. Get your team ready. We need to keep their focus off us for as long as possible. Ragnar gave a single, sharp nod, his fingers tapping the comms to coordinate with the Marines. The ship's crew moved swiftly, knowing that every action now would determine the fate of the Hercules and of humanity's place in the galaxy. We've got it, Captain, Halen said, his voice clipped, his brow furrowed in concentration. We've got the lock. The tension in the room mounted. Dallon stood at the helm, watching the laser plasma display, where the blinking lights of the alien fleet grew brighter, sharper. They were coming closer, closing in on them with the inevitability of a storm. But Dallon wasn't afraid of the storm. He knew how to weather it. Do it, he ordered. The railguns powered up with a thunderous roar, the immense energy building like the release of a dam. The entire ship trembled with the force, the walls vibrating under the pressure of what they were about to unleash. Dallon held his breath as the final sequence unfolded, and then the shot was fired. It cut through the void like a comet, streaking toward the alien command ship. Time seemed to stretch as the missile hurtled toward its target, the air thick with anticipation. The moment was suspended, every eye on the screen, every breath held in the command room. And then, with a crack that rang out across the Hercules, the explosion ripped through the alien ship. The blast was like nothing they had seen before, an eruption of light and energy that tore the heart of the enemy fleet apart. The shockwave surged outward, rippling through the vast emptiness of space, a wave of destruction that spread outward, catching the other ships in its wake. Dallon exhaled slowly, his breath shaky but relieved. We've done it, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But even as he spoke, the console flared to life, a warning flashing on the screen. The Hercules was not out of danger yet. The remaining alien ships were regrouping, and now their desperation was palpable. They're not finished yet, Ragnar muttered, his voice dark with understanding. They're coming back. They'll be more vicious than ever now. Dallon's gaze never left the display. The battle was far from over, but the tides had shifted. Humanity's resolve had proven stronger than their enemy had anticipated. Now they had to finish what they started. Prepare for the next phase, Dallon said, his voice cool and steady. This isn't over, not by a long shot. The Hercules had taken its share of blows, but it wasn't finished yet. The alien fleet, once a massive force that had descended on them like a storm, now writhed in confusion. The command ship had been crippled, but the remaining vessels were no less dangerous. The air in the command room was thick with the weight of what was about to unfold. Dallon could feel it in the pit of his stomach. The final test. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity's will to fight, to survive. But there was still more to prove. Captain, they're regrouping. They're going for the kill. Halen's voice came through, calm but edged with concern. His fingers danced across the plasma displays, navigating through layers of data as he scanned the movement of the remaining ships. They've adapted, Captain. They're learning from their mistakes. Dallon glanced at the screen. The alien vessels were no longer scattered or disorganized. They were forming a new offensive, their movements more synchronized than ever. But it didn't matter. They had made a critical error. They had underestimated the resilience of the Hercules, the resilience of humanity. "Then we make our own mistake," Dallon muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His voice was quiet but resolute, a steady calm in the midst of chaos. "We show them that humanity doesn't run." He turned to his crew, his eyes scanning each face. Halen, Ragnar, Kalen, they were all here, all still standing, all still fighting. There was no doubt in his mind that they would push forward, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They wanted to prove that humanity's place in the galaxy was earned, not given. "Prepare the final offensive," Dallon ordered, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "We take down their remaining ships. We finish this." The crew moved with practiced precision. Halen's fingers flew over the console, rerouting energy for the final push. Ragnar's Marines readied their weapons. Kalen, despite the exhaustion written across his face, remained focused, determined to keep the wounded alive just long enough for this last stand. Outside, the alien fleet closed in, but they were disorganized now, frantic. The air in the bridge seemed to charge with anticipation. The Hercules was outnumbered, outgunned, but what the enemy didn't understand was that they were fighting a species that had no intention of rolling over and dying. Humanity had survived against all odds before. This was no different. "Captain," Halen said, his voice steady as the laser plasma displays lit up with the final strike plan. "We've got the lock, but this time the shot has to be perfect. We've got no more reserves. This is it." Dallon nodded, his eyes narrowing. The final shot. They had a plan, but there was no guarantee, no second chances. They had one chance to take out the last of the alien fleet, one shot to end it all. "Then we make it count," Dallon said firmly. He turned to Ragnar. "Get us in position. Make sure they can't dodge this." Ragnar gave a sharp nod and headed for the door, rallying his Marines as they prepared for the final engagement. The ship trembled slightly beneath their feet, a reminder of how much the Hercules had been through, how much it had withstood. It was bruised, battered, but still alive, just like the crew. Dallon turned back to the display, his hand resting lightly on the console. His eyes flicked to the map, the alien fleet's position locked in. He could feel the weight of every life on this ship, every person depending on him to make the right move. But he wasn't alone. He had a crew that believed in him, that believed in humanity's fight. "Here it comes," Halen said, his voice focused. "Locking on now." The countdown began on the heads-up display, the seconds ticking down like a heartbeat. Each passing moment seemed to stretch longer, like a slow march toward the unknown. But Dallon's mind was clear. They had done everything they could. They had outsmarted, outlasted, and outgunned the enemy. Now it was time to end it. As the final seconds approached, Dallon felt the deep burning desire to prove something, not just to the aliens, but to themselves, to the entire galaxy. Humanity had always been seen as weak, insignificant, just another species to be crushed under the boot of the powerful. But in this moment, they would show them. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity was a force of nature, capable of bending the galaxy to its will. "Fire!" Dallon commanded. The shot rang out, and for a moment everything seemed to stop. The ship jolted as the weapons discharged with a massive force, the railguns firing with a power that rattled the Hercules to its core. Dallon's eyes followed the trajectory of the blast, his heart pounding as the energy surged toward the alien command vessel. The laser plasma display flared with the brilliance of the explosion. The shockwave rippled through space, visible even in the vast blackness, sending shockwaves through the remaining alien fleet. The command ship buckled, its massive frame disintegrating in the wake of the devastating blast. The fleet's coordinated efforts fell apart as the core of their power dissolved in an instant. For a brief, fleeting moment, there was silence. The hum of the ship's systems, the frantic noise of battle, everything faded as the crew watched the aftermath unfold on the display. One by one, the remaining alien ships began to fall apart. Their formations crumbled, their systems failed, and then the message came, a final transmission from Valdis. You should have surrendered, the voice crackled, filled with disbelief and rage. This is not over. You... The message cut off abruptly, replaced by the static silence of victory. Dallon allowed himself a brief breath, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The weight of the battle, the uncertainty, the fear, they were all gone. The Hercules had survived. Humanity had survived. Against all odds, they had prevailed. Well, that's one way to do it. Ragnar's voice broke through the silence, a rough chuckle escaping his lips. It was a rare sound, light, full of life in a way that felt both foreign and familiar in the midst of this war. You sure know how to make an exit, Captain. Dallon turned to him, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. We don't do anything halfway, Ragnar. Halen let out a long breath, his fingers still hovering over the console, watching as the last of the alien fleet disintegrated in the distance. We did it. We actually did it. The crew stood in the aftermath, the weight of the moment settling over them like the calm after a storm. The Hercules was still alive, still whole. It had been battered, scarred, but it stood tall. Dallon looked out over the bridge, his gaze lingering on each of his crew members. Kalen, exhausted but resolute. Halen, eyes alight with the adrenaline of victory. Ragnar standing tall and steady as always. We did it because we never gave up, Dallon said softly, his voice full of pride and quiet strength. We're human. We adapt. We overcome. And when the galaxy thought it could break us, we proved them wrong. The Hercules had fought, had survived, and in that moment, it was clear that humanity had done the same. The galaxy had underestimated them. But humanity wasn't just here to survive. It was here to rise.